In Jewish literature, a great deal is made of numbers. You may have heard of Gematria. The simplest possible meaning of Gematria is that the letters have numerical values based on their order in the alphabet. And when you have a word, if you add the numbers values together, you get the value of the word, or add one, which is sometimes called the koil. And then those numerical values are supposed to have certain types of significance. I think it's important at the outset to know that perhaps nothing, or perhaps I'm missing a few cases on the side, but next to nothing is proved on the basis of numerical values. No fundamental idea, no law is proved that way. Rather, the tradition itself assigns certain values to certain numbers. Where you find those numbers, those are references to ideas which we know elsewhere, usually from the oral tradition. So they are a connection to this piece of the oral tradition, or it shows that this piece of oral tradition may apply more broadly than you thought. But no fundamental idea is based on just the numerical values. Now, having said that, let's start at the top and notice that certain numbers have values, have significance, they can't be denied. Say the number 7.
Amen.
The Torah makes a big deal out of the number 7. Thank you very much. There are 7 days of the week. There are 7 days of Pesach. You unfortunates listening to this outside the land of Israel and have 8 days, that's because you live in the wrong place. You live where you belong. You have the biblical holiday, which is 7 days. Sukkah is 7 days. The 8th day is really a separate holiday. So you're not Sukkah, you don't dwell on Sukkah. There are 7 weeks between beginning of Pesach and Shavuos, and we count the days, we get 49. There are 3 patriarchs and 4 matriarchs, which makes 7. So exactly 7 people who are the foundation of the Jewish people. 7 is a number that has a lot of significance. 10 is another one. In the Torah itself, the pronouncements at Sinai are called Aseres HaDvarim, the 10 sayings. There's no particular reason to count them up. You can count them yourself. What difference does it make whether they're 10 or not? If the Torah tells you it's the 10 sayings, and by the way, don't make the mistake of following the English translations which talk about the 10 commandments. There is no such thing as the 10 commandments. In that passage, which was revealed at Sinai, there are 14 or 15 commandments, depending upon how you count. The 10 commandments is wrong, capital W. But they're broken up into 10 statements. In the rabbinic literature, they're called Dibros. Dibros and Dvarim are the same root, they're just a question of the grammatical construction. But the number 10 is attached to it by the text itself. So then, apparently, the number 10 makes a big difference. Very often with the sacrifices, groups of 7. Then, if you count, well, this is part of the oral tradition, but the attributes of mercy, which were revealed to Moses, are 13. There are really, if you count correctly, how many tribes of the Jewish people? There are really 13, sort of, because the truth is there are 2 different ways of counting 12, which makes 12 an important number, but there are 2 different ways to count. Either you count Levi as a tribe, in which case you count Joseph as a tribe, and not his 2 children, Ephraim and Manasseh, or you leave Levi out. For example, when you're dividing up the land of Israel as inheritance, geographically, Levi doesn't get a piece of land. You get cities, but they don't get a piece of land. It's divided up into 12, so that Levi is left out, and Ephraim and Manasseh count as 2. So it's always 12, but it's this 12 or that 12, and there are 13 elements in the game. So the number of tribes in the tribal discussions is 13 elements, not 12. So 12 is important, the 13 is important. These numbers are built into the text itself. Now, in the oral tradition, the numerical value of words plays a big role. For example, a person who says, I take a vow, a Nazirite vow, which is basically a vow not to drink grape products or ingest grape products, and not to come in contact with dead people, graves, or in funerals, and also not to cut his hair. And he doesn't specify the time period of the vow. Usually it's not forever. So the normal, unspoken, understood time period is 30 days. So the Gemara asks, what's the reference to that? And it's because it says, Yehieh, he will be, and the numerical value of Yehieh is 30. But that's not where it's being learned from. The 30 is an oral tradition. And the oral tradition tells you, this word is where this tradition is expressed. It's not that some later generations of rabbis said, how long should this be, do you think? Oh, well, that's 30 days. That's almost like a month. So look at a month. Oh, and look at this. He has 30. So that, no, that's not what happened. When you look at some of the statements in the oral tradition where they make use of the numbers, I think you can see this pretty clearly. This is an example that I use to test people's prejudices. I'll tell you an idea, and you tell me who the author of the idea is. The Torah says that the Egyptians caused the Jewish people to work at hard labor. And the word for hard labor there is parach, beforech, pei reish chaf. Okay, this idea treats the word parach as a code word. And there are two steps in decoding the word. First step is what's called atbash. This is mentioned actually in the Gemara. Atbash means you associate the letters of the alphabet the following way. The first with the last, the second with the next to last, the third with the third from last. So it's at, aleph taf, first and last. Bash, second and next to last, beis shimon, beis shin, and so forth and so on. Associated that way. You look at a word and you say, what's the atbash translation? Take each of the letters and ask, what is the corresponding letter in the atbash coding? So, let's take the word farech, pei reish chaf. Pei is 6 from the end, so it's going to be associated with vav, which is 6 from the beginning. Reish is 3 from the end, so it's going to be associated with gimel, which is 3 from the beginning. Chaf is, if you're thinking of 22 letters, chaf is 12 from the end, over the middle. So you have to take the letter that's after it that's associated with it, which is lamed. So the chaf is replaced by a lamed. Okay, now let's keep track. We had a vav, and a gimel, and a lamed. Now we take the numerical value of those letters. Well, the vav is 6, and the gimel is 3, is 9, and the lamed is 30, is 39. And the idea ends with these words. These are the 39 activities which are forbidden on Shabbos, and all of which were used in constructing the tabernacle. And the verse talking about the work in Egypt is to tell you that the Egyptians caused the Jewish people to engage in all 39 of these activities in their slavery. Who wrote that? Who made that up? What style or what source of Jewish literature is that found in? If you ask the person with the right prejudices, they'll say, "Oh, it must be a Hasidic idea." You know, the Hasidim are really totally irresponsible, and they use their imaginations and they think up these phantasmagoric fantasies. But it happens to be Tosfos. Taisus in Psachim, last chapter of the Tractate Psachim, gives this word. So, nothing more normative than Taisus. You can't laugh Taisus away and say that they're affected by Eastern Europe. Now, what's going on here? Well, the idea of 39 categories of action is an oral tradition. That they were used in the tabernacle is something which the Gemara talks about, and that the Torah said on Shabbos don't do the things that were used in the tabernacle. It says specifically build the tabernacle, but not on Shabbos, which means that all those activities can't be done. Now, what this word does, it says you're used to the 39 in two different contexts. In the context of building the tabernacle, which means to be used for something holy, and in the context of Shabbos, we are not allowed to do them. We want you to know that 39 characterized another context, the context of Egyptian slavery. And that means then that both Shabbos and the tabernacle, both, in a certain sense, redeem Egyptian slavery. When you were under the Egyptians, you were forced to carry out all of these activities to aid them in their culture, in their religion, in their economy, and you as slaves, which for a Jew is a tragedy. And now those very same 39 become the instruments which you create the context in which God manifests His presence, which is the tabernacle, and it's a connection with the physical, which when you're in Shabbos, you're on a higher spiritual level. You don't need that connection with the physical. So what the idea is doing is taking something which is a well-established idea, and through the Gematria and the Atbash, saying that it has historical reference, which in and of itself is a plausible historical reference. That's an example of how these things are used. But it's very widespread. I want to give you some examples where you can appreciate sometimes how complex they are, how well knit together they are, and how they can be used, as I say, to express ideas which are central to Torah ideas on their own. What I'm telling you now is in the Sefer HaMakneh. It's a commentary on Tractate Kedushin, written by one of the early Hasidic masters. It's very well used in yeshivas. There's a story in the Gemara that a town had a problem. That town had a synagogue, and attached to the synagogue there was a shade. A shade is a creature which has some physical qualities and some spiritual qualities, but is not a compound like a human being is. A compound has a body and a soul. The body is fully physical, the soul is fully spiritual, and the human being is a compound of those two. A shade is a single thing. It has a single character, but its character, in terms of the categories, is partly spiritual and partly physical. And sometimes they can be damaging and dangerous. This town, the synagogue in this town, had such a shade, and it was causing fright and causing damage. What to do? So they concocted the following plan. They invited a famous rabbi to come to the town on the pretext that they needed to have legal and halachic guidance. And then the plan was, we'll keep him here busy with our questions until nightfall, and he'll have to stay overnight, and no one will give him hospitality. When somebody didn't get hospitality, he would sleep in the synagogue. So he'll be sleeping in the synagogue. At nighttime is when the shade is usually active, and there'll be a confrontation, and this scholar will take care of it. And actually, the plan worked. They kept him there the whole day, and he slept in the synagogue. There was a confrontation, and the scholar was able to rid the town of that problem. But the process by which it happened was this. The shade appeared as a creature with 7 heads, and the Talmud says that the scholar bowed to God 7 times, and as he bowed to God, each one of the 7 heads fell off until it had no heads left, and then it was destroyed. So the Makneh asks, how did the scholar know to do that? Okay, there are 7 heads, but who says the right way thing to do is to bow? prostrate oneself before God to destroy the 7 heads. And he says this was learned from a famous incident in the life of our patriarch Jacob. And maybe you'll remember when Jacob came back from his 20 years outside the land of Israel with his whole family and all his possessions, and Esau came to meet him. When Jacob approached Esau, he bowed 7 times on his way to meeting Esau. And when they met, they embraced. Now, Jacob, by bowing 7 times, neutralized the evil that was in Esau. Well, let's see. Where does 7 come to the evil that's in Esau, and what has 7 got to do with Jacob? Now, here are some facts. The name of God has a Gematria of 26. The Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey together make 26. Jacob's name in Hebrew, Yaakov, is 7 times 26. Isaac's name in Hebrew, Yitzchak, is 8 times 26. Esau, Esav, is 7 times 50 plus 26. You say, oh, okay, Rabbi, okay. But what's 50? 50 is the Gematria of Tameh. Tameh means defiled, degraded, spoiled. So you look at Esau, and what do you see? You see 7 times Tameh plus 1 instance of God's name. Now their father, Isaac, has 8 instances of God's name. Jacob has 7, and Esau has 1 plus 7 times Tameh. Aha. If you look carefully at the blessing that Yitzchak gave to Yaakov, you'll see it divides into 7 blessings. And in addressing Esau, he really gave him only 1 blessing. Some say he gave him none, but it's certainly only 1 idea. So the 8 names that Yitzchak has, 7 go to Yaakov and 1 goes to Esav. But the problem is, Esav has 1 occurrence of God's name with 7 times Tameh. Now can you figure it out? What was Jacob doing? Bowing to his brother, to God, in the context of his brother, bowing 7 times. Each time he cut off 1 of the tummies. By the time he reached him, the 7 tummies were neutralized. There was only Yud-Kei Vav-Kei left. So of course they embraced. Jacob, has 7 names from his father. Esau has the 1 remaining name from his father, and they embraced. And that what gave the scholar in the Talmud the understanding that just as his ancestor, Jacob, bowed to God to cut off 1 of these sources of defilement and degradation, so he did the same thing. Each time he bowed to God, 1 of the heads fell off. Now, we have a verse that we say every morning, V'alu Moshe b'har Tzion, l'shbot asar Esav, v'yisrael Hashem ha'melucha. The saviors will go up on the Mount of Zion to judge the Mount of Esau, and Hashem will have the kingdom. Zion, Sion in Hebrew, is God's name 6 times. 6 times. Well, one of the blessings that Isaac gave to Jacob was conditional. Wasn't absolute. You'll be master over your brother. But, Kashir Tarid, Ufaraktu Ulo Me'al Tzavarecha, he says to Esau, when your brother will deteriorate, you can throw his yoke off your neck. Tzion's a time when that 1 blessing that was given to Jacob isn't applicable. Because we have deteriorated and Esau has gotten loose. He's functioning on his own. That's why Sion needs saviors. Saviors are going to go up the Mount of Zion. Because the word Sion is the Jewish people in trouble, in danger, suffering oppression. And what are they going to do? They're going to finish the accounting with Esau. Because what happened when Jacob bowed down to Esau 7 times was only temporary. Esau played many roles in world history, and often they were opposing us bitterly. That has to be finally settled. And when it's finally settled, then the 7 tummies will be cut off entirely, and what will be left will be something which can attach itself to us in the appropriate way. So, you see here, a whole structure, and the numbers fit together, and the ideas fit together. And again, we're not talking about creating new ideas, but we're talking about expressing old ideas. Now, Yitzchak is 8 times God's name, Yaakov is 7 times God's name, Yosef is 6 times God's name. The Medrash says everything that happened to Yaakov happened to Yosef. You know that Yaakov gave preference to Yosef. He loved Yosef more than he loved the other brothers because he saw him as his continuation. You see the progression. Yitzchak, Yaakov, Yosef. So it does look like these numbers dovetail in a way that would be unlikely just by chance. But I'm not using that statistically as an argument in mathematical science so as to be able to convince you that the ideas are true. I'm just pointing out that the numbers do in fact express these ideas. In the same passage, the Makna says something else, which I think is just peripheral. If you take the name Yisrael, so the Sin and the Resh make 500, the Yud is 10, 510, Aleph is 1, is 11, and Lam is 30, is 541. If you take the name Yaakov, which is 182, if I'm not mistaken, if you subtract Yaakov from Israel, why would you do that? Why are you subtracting Yaakov from Israel? Well, then it's going to turn out that Israel is Yaakov plus X. Whatever the thing that's remained is X. It'd be nice to know that Yisrael is Yaakov plus X. What's the X? And the answer is that the number you get is 359. And 359 is the Gematria of Satan. Oh yeah, Rabbi? That's the Gematria? So what? I mean, why would Israel be Yaakov plus Satan? And the answer is this, that normally where Jews start out from, the valid but not ideal resolution of dealing with the Yetzer Hara is to be able to defend yourself against the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, so that your life will be led correctly. And Yaakov had that power. But the higher level is to incorporate the Yetzer Hara in your service of God, to take that which will, under many occasions, push you to do things that are bad, and use it as motivation to do things that are good. That's Yisrael. Yisrael is Yaakov plus Satan. Yisrael incorporates the Satan. Yisrael internalizes the Satan in his life of holiness, of service of God, of doing good. So that's what that Gematria expresses. Now, the idea that you're supposed to use the Yetzer Hara to serve God is written in the Gemara explicitly. It's not a new idea. But you see how the numbers enable it to dovetail in this way, and something which is, I think, very, very expressive. Let's put it that way. It's very expressive. Now, I want to show you. Let me take out Cedar. There's people Cedar. I'll show you how counting. Thank you. Counting letters, even just counting letters, can express ideas in a very, I think I would say, a very dramatic way. I want you to look at Birkas Kohanim. This is on page, where am I here? I'm in Mincha. You can look at page 246. So a little bit below the middle of the page, you have a gray box, rectangular box, and the bottom 3 lines on the right-hand side are the actual words of the priestly blessing. Priestly blessing comes in 3 verses. If you first count the number of words in each verse, what do you get? 3, 5, 7, which of course is a progression. Okay, now here's something harder. Count the letters in each verse. Do it calmly enough to be careful.
15, 20, 25.
Yeah, so you started and then you guessed, right? Yes, it's 15, 20, 25. Well, it's not certainly no necessary connection between the words making a progression and the numbers of letters making a progression. They both do. It sounds like, something's going on. Now, let's see. Do these numbers, 15, so the sum total number of words is 3, 5, 7 is 15. And sum total number of letters, 15, 20, 25, 60, right? Are there any significance to these numbers? This I thought of myself when I got a stimulus to think about these things. 15 is the number of one of the divine names, a Yud and a Hey. You surely noticed that name, those letters, Yud and Hey, are the first two letters of the four-letter name. The Torah treats the Yud and the Hey as an incomplete name. God will be at war with Amalek until Amalek is eradicated, one way or another. And then we'll go from the Yud Hey to Yud Hey and Vav Hey. There are further things to go beyond that, but that we'll go to that. So it's an incomplete name referring to a condition in which things are not ideal. So I thought to myself, maybe that means that the priestly blessing is available even when things aren't ideal. The most powerful expression of the priestly blessing is in the temple. It started with Aaron, giving it after the sacrifices. There's a certain name of God which is said only by the priests in the temple, but it's a mitzvah everywhere. And if you had the experience, because you live in Queens, or you live in Johannesburg, or you live in London, where you say, gee, Rabbi, we only have this blessing on the holidays. We don't have it the rest of the year. Well, the truth is, it is not at all clear why that is so. And there are places in the world where they make this blessing every day. There's a Syrian congregation in Brooklyn. I happened to be there because I had to catch a flight. They daven nates every morning. And Rav Scheinberg was there, because he always davens there, because he wants to hear priestly blessing. And they do it in New York every day. So, seeing 15 here made me think this is a symptom of the fact that really, in principle, the priestly blessing is available when there is no temple and when we're in exile and so forth and so on. It makes no difference. Priestly blessing is available. Now, there are 60 letters. Well, 60 happens to be a number that's mentioned specifically in the Song of Songs, where King Solomon writes that, Mita So Shel Shlomo, Shishim Givim Savila, Kula Malumde Milchama, Ish Charbo Yirecho, Mipachat Balelos. The bed of Solomon is surrounded by 60 warriors, well trained in war, each one with his sword on his thigh, due to fear of the nights. Nights without a K and a G. And with a G, without a K. Nighttime. Nighttime in our literature is a symbol of exile. Exile, again, is a time that's not ideal, that's dangerous. So, the number of letters, and by the way, Tosfos actually says this, the number of letters refers to this nighttime period where this priestly blessing is available. So both the number of words and the number of letters teach the same idea, that it's available under non-ideal conditions. Now, there's another thing that I noticed, but I couldn't figure out. How many times does God's name appear in the entire priestly blessing? 3, right? Once in the second word of each blessing. Let's see, there are 15 words altogether. 3 out of 15 is? 1/5, 20%. Now let's try it with the letters. There are 4 letters tied up in each of God's names. So 3 of them means you have 12 letters. 12 out of 60 is 1/5. That again doesn't have to be. The percentage of the words in the total number of words does not have to be the percentage of letters in the total number of letters. Not at all. It just works out that way, right? Just works out that way. The words are a progression, the letters are a progression, percentages are the same. There's too much going on here to think that this is just put together slapdash. But I couldn't figure out what's the 20%. So I asked my Rabbi Zatzal, and he said, this is blessing. Blessing is abundance, a divine gift of abundance. We have a mitzvah of tzedakah. Now, there are 2 opinions about the mitzvah of tzedakah. One is that the minimum is, and tzedakah is complicated. I don't mean this to be practical. It's an idea, and it's got to be worked out. We have our our W-9 forms and our 10 forms. But the idea is that tzedakah is 10% of your income, minimum, 20% maximum. 20% maximum. The Gaon of Vilna says it's 20% the minimum also. So here you have verses that express blessing. 1/5 of those verses is God's name. So Rabbi said that's an indication of the 1/5 that the Gaon of Vilna would say is the mitzvah of tzedakah, or what the Chachamim in Usha says the maximum, the norm, whatever. It's a number attached to tzedakah. Dedicate to God, to God's name, 1/5 of the blessing that He gives you. So there's an awful lot going on here. Now, where did they put this verse? Oh, I know it is. I got into this because I once asked my Rabbi Zatzal, what should I do if I can't sleep? The truth is, I have no trouble sleeping at all. I hit to go to bed, and I think about some problem in physics or in mathematics, and I fall asleep. I'm not joking, that's what I do. But, who knows what can happen? And a Rebbe is a Rebbe. So what should I do? So he said, think about the verse, Torah tziva lana Moshe, Morosh Kehillas Yaakov. Now, if you look on page 947, the bottom of the left-hand column, you will see that verse. Right in the middle of the last block of text. Torah is is the second word on the line. Torah tziva lana Moshe, Morosh Kehillas Yaakov. So there I was that night after he told me. I thought, what about this pasuk? What should I think about? Well, first of all, let's think about the number of words. How many words do you have in this pasuk? 7. How many letters? What did you get?
I can't find it.
Oh, you can find it.
947.
No, 947.
947.
Yeah. Left-hand column.
Hazina.
No, the left-hand column towards the bottom. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines from the bottom.
Oh.
It's the second word on the line.
Torah tziva lana.
Yeah, that's right.
We're figuring out how many letters are in it?
Yeah.
Six.
26. At 26. So there's seven words, like the 7 days of the week, and 7 days of Pesach, so forth and so on. 26 is the Gematria of God's name. And the verse breaks up into 2 halves. Torah tziva lana Moshe, comma. Morosh Kehillas Yaakov, and the comma is in the text, in the trup. I'm not making it up. And that means the 26 breaks up into letters. How many letters in the first half? Torah tziva lana Moshe.
13.
13. And that means the second half has?
13.
Because it was 26, right? So it's 13 and 13. These are 13 attributes of mercy. So I thought to myself, wow, There's an awful lot going on in this verse, after which I couldn't sleep. That's what the told me to do. Okay, so then that in itself, this is a very central pasuk. This is a pasuk describing the origin of the Torah and its relationship to the Jewish people, to Morosha, which means it's like an inheritance, which you pass down, you get it by right, you get it automatically without having to do anything to deserve it. An inheritance comes to you when the parent dies, you get it automatically. I mean, it's very dramatic pasuk. And it's signed with God's name, broken up into 13 and 13, which are the attributes of mercy. That's contributing to the meaning of the verse. Yeah. You have a question? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Now, I want to show you, this is another theme which I have expressed often, that the rabbis also made use of this kind of calculation. Let's look at Lechadodi. 3:16. The refrain, Lechadodi likos kalo, Pnei Shabbos lekablo. How many words? 7. Notice the same structure as Torah Tziva Moshe, 4 and then 3. This is rabbinic, but still. How about the letters? I hope there are 26. Let's see.
In the line of Lechadodi?
Yeah, just that line. 3 and 4 is 7, and 5 is 12, and 3 is 15.
26.
Oh, okay. And 3 is 18, and 3 is 21, and 5 is 26. So here the rabbis are giving us a line which has 7 words and 26 letters, just like Torah Tzivil on Moshe, and it breaks up poetically in the same way: 4 words and then 3 words. So you see, the rabbis take these elements of the written Torah and use them. Now, if you'll turn back one page, and you come to the 29th Psalm, and your helpful, friendly article Cedar at the very top of the page in indecipherable tiny letters says, it is customary to stand during the recitation of the following psalm.
Oh, it's Mizmor
No, Mizmor Dovid. Avol Hashem b'nei Elim. Right? It's customary to stand when you say this psalm. Why is that? Why do we do that? So the Gemara has 3 reasons. One reason is because there are 18 occurrences of God's name in the psalm, and 18 is the number of blessings in the Shemona Esrei, which you say standing. So here too, 18 indicates that you should stand. So I would like you to verify by counting the number of names in the psalm, verify that there are indeed 18 occurrences of God's name. I'll just give you one hint. This is a trick question.
There's 17 Yud Kei Vav Keis,
No, 18.
No, they're 18.
but
Okay, stop. You know too much. There are 18 Yud Kei Vav Keis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the clever critic will say, but Rabbi, today we have 19 blessings, don't we? Not 18. One was added. So, it's a little out of date, isn't it? Oh, exactly. But there's another name.
Shalom.
If you got, no, good try, but there's a much better word than shalom. You're counting the Hashem in English, or the Yud and the Hey and Vav and the Hey in Hebrew, but there's another different name of God in the psalm. In the Hebrew, on the third line, the third word. No. Much better than that. In the third line, 3 words from the end of the line. Aleph Lamed. Kale. It's a direct name of God. It's what the English writes as G-O-D. Right? So you might not. Now, I say, this is me talking with a little bit of, shall I say, jocular vocabulary. I call this the swing name. If you want, you can follow 18. Yud Kei Vav Kei is the central name of God, and it would be perfectly appropriate to count 18 of them and ignore Aleph Lamed. But it's there, and it's also a name of God. So if you should happen to need it, you could count it also. So when you have 19 blessings, you can count it, and you're in business. Right? You have 19 also. Okay. Now, this is what the Arizal says. That this is the idea of standing up here. Now the question is this. What does standing up indicate? Why are we standing up? So let's go back, turn back to 316, the Lecha Dodi, and let's ask, what does Lecha Dodi mean? Lecha Dodi, come, my beloved. Likras Kala, to greet the bride, the presence of Shabbos we should welcome. Come, my beloved. Someone is talking to someone. Who's talking to who?
We are to Shabbos.
No, certainly not. It says, come, my beloved, let's go out and greet Shabbos. So we're not talking to Shabbos. Shabbos isn't with us. We're talking to someone or something and inviting that one to come with us to go out and greet Shabbos who's outside.
Talking to Hashem?
Okay, could you prove that?
Capital B in beloved.
Yeah, isn't that good? The English puts a capital B.
Like capital R, the Redeemer.
I don't know where they get the idea of sprinkling the capital letters throughout the thing. I never understood that. But Dodi isn't a foreign word. It's used in the Song of Songs quite a number of times. Dodi is masculine. Who's the masculine figure in the Song of Songs? I know in the parable it's a king. That king is God. So Dodi, my beloved, the word Dodi refers to God. So this is the Jewish people inviting God to go out together to greet Shabbos. Then the Jewish question will be, if we're inviting God to go out with us to greet Shabbos, when did he come in? Oh, go back one page. That's when he came in. When we said Mizmor Dovid, he came in, and that's why we're standing up. We're standing up because that's when he came in. And that's the idea of 18. Because 18 is the number of blessings in the Shemona Esrei. You're standing before God. So he's present. Again, I'm not proving anything. I'm showing you how the number serves the idea and expresses the idea in a very vivid way. Yeah.
Sorry, why would God walk in or out? I thought God was here.
From your general vocabulary and general information base, I will say you should know yourself the answer to that question. What's special about the temple? Not that God isn't in San Francisco.
It's a Shekhinah.
Well, okay. If you say that, then it means that the Shekhinah isn't everywhere equally, and it isn't. The Chazal have very specific statements where the Shekhinah is. So, time also has its special qualities, and the Shekhinah is present in the time of Shabbos that it isn't at other times. Manifest. Present is a better word, because it doesn't limit the reality; it just limits our perception of the reality. That's the difference. In the temple, first temple, there were 10 miracles that went on continuously. You can walk in and see them with your own eyes. You don't see that in Tel Aviv or in Beersheba or in Svas. You see it in the temple. It's not that God isn't in Tel Aviv. Yeah, even Tel Aviv. Yeah, God is there, but He doesn't manifest Himself in the same way. That's a very beginning arch Jewish idea. So, let me think. Now,
is a Jew obligated to accept the conclusions of Gematria, or is it a perfectly kosher position to have skepticism over Gematria? Or there's some conclusions which cannot be negated?
You put the question in an interesting way. Is a Jew obligated to accept the conclusions of Gematria, the principle of Gematria, or some things that could be skeptical about, and so forth and so on? I think the right answer to a question like that is, what is the attitude of the normative scholarship on the question? If the normative scholarship makes use of these techniques, then because we are obligated to accept those people as authorities, we're obligated to accept the things that they say. I don't know. Obviously, I don't have encyclopedic knowledge of Jewish literature, but I don't know anyone who simply dismisses the whole thing out of hand. There are some places in the Gemara where it exists. No one can dismiss a Tosfos out of hand. They can't do that. That would just result in their being removed from the Jewish tradition. So you can't do that. Yeah.
How do Gematrias affect our view of Bible codes? Are they real or not? And does Gematrias affect that?
It's a long story. The Bible codes is a long story. Was to put it as mildly and as calmly and unprejudiced as I can. I'm not convinced by any of them. I think they're all weak. If you are interested in the subject, there is a comprehensive review of the most supposedly convincing case, the case which is supposed to be the strongest of all. The name of the person who wrote the review is Barry Simon. Barry Simon is a professor at Caltech. He has the IBM chair at Caltech in mathematics, and he's a frum Jew. And he's very skeptical on technical mathematical grounds. I think that there's no reason to accept them whatsoever. But as I said at the beginning, we're not proving anything with the Gematrias. Gematrias are downstream. The ideas are already there, and the Gematrias are there, and they express ideas that are already in the literature. They're already there. Not proving that something's right on that basis. I'm going to go to one more thing. Oh, yes. So now, the names. In the book of Genesis, 3 incidents address names. I'm going to tell you this. You should look it up if you're not familiar with it. But there are 3 different incidents that are not the same at all. Abraham's name is changed from Avram to Avraham. Sarah's name is revealed, not changed. It's revealed. Shem says to Avram, don't call her Sarai, for Sarah is her name. Doesn't say she used to be Sarai and now she's becoming Sarah. No. Don't call her Sarai because Sarah is her name. And in Jacob's case, he gets an extra name. It's not changed at all. He was first period of life was only Jacob, and then he became Jacob and Israel. Okay, but now when you're talking about Avram and Sarah, there's a Kliyakar, which says something which, again, let's see. He used to be Avram, and he becomes Avraham. So he gets an extra hey. She has a yud at the end of her name, and the result of it is, the yud is 10, which means she was always Sarah, but she had an extra 5. She was carrying around an extra 5. because her name is Sarah. She's been called Sarai. What was she doing with that extra 5? That was the hay that Abraham was missing. So what really happens here is a hay is transferred from Sarah to Abraham. Well, what is a hay? So the pasuk in the beginning of Genesis says, Eila told Shemayim v'aretz v'hibaram. These are the generations or the products of heavens and earth in their being created, b'hibaram. And in that word, the hay is small, smaller than the rest of the letters of the Torah. There are scattered throughout the Torah letters smaller than usual and letters larger than usual, which indicate that those letters play a special role. One explanation is to take the same letters in that word in the same order, but vowelize it differently, and it comes out Behei Bra'am. He created all of them with a hay. Behei means he uses the hay as a tool. Bra'am, he created them. So the hay is the process of creation. Process of creation. When Joseph gives seed to the Egyptian farmers at the end of the famine, at the end of the 2 years, he says, Hey lachem zara. Hey aleph in the text. Hey lachem zara. That time it works. All the previous times the seeds rotted, and didn't sprout, didn't germinate. This time it worked. Okay, so says the Kli Yakar. If you look at what's happening with the names, Avram has no hay. Sarah has 2 hays. She's got her own hay and carrying around an extra hay. At this point in their lives, a hay is transferred from Sarah to Avram. At which point, the critic says, Rabbi, come on. This is totally out of place with respect to the real facts. Because at this time in their lives, when he's 99 and she's 89, he already has a child. He has Ishmael. And she's barren. And you're telling me she has double creativity and he has none. It's skewed. It's contradicting to the facts. Good. If you thought of that, congratulations. That's a good question. But the answer is very simple. Sure, he had creativity, all right. Creativity to create Ishmael, who gets rejected and is very problematic. He didn't have the creativity to produce Isaac. That he didn't have. She had it double, and he had nothing. And when the hay is transferred from her name to his name, then they are able to conceive Yitzchak, Isaac, and give birth to the second patriarch. And one little indication of it is this. The Gemara says that Jacob is the greatest of the patriarchs. Now, greatest means he achieved the greatest level. Not that he was the greatest tzaddik, not that he got the greatest merit, because the level he achieved in part because his father and grandfather created a platform from which he started. But the level he achieved was the highest level. And you can see that in the fact that Abraham had non-Jewish children, lots, at least 7, maybe more. Isaac had non-Jewish children, Esau. Jacob's children all were within the Jewish people. That gives him that special distinction. Well, what are you going to say about Sarah? She had one child who stayed within the Jewish people, and she did it. First generation, not third generation. One of the many great, outstanding elements in Sarah's life. So she's carrying around the 2 hays that are the ingredients of Yitzchak. Won't do her any good to have both of them. She can't do it alone. So then the hay is transferred from her to Avram. He becomes Abraham. Then they can together create Yitzchak. You know, the ideas again are common ideas, but the letters and the values express it in a very dramatic way. The Torah here is using the letters to communicate ideas like this. And one last thing to tell you, this is based on observations of the Gaon of Vilna. This is borders on Nistar. The shapes of the letters also have significance. The word Sukkah, when it's spelled Samach Chaf Hey, are 3 diagrams of how a sukkah can be built. A sukkah can have 4 walls like a Samach, it can have 3 walls like a Chaf, or it can have 2 walls and a spitz like a Dalet. Those are the 3 ways in which a sukkah can be built. And the letters give you the pictures of the sukkah. You understand me? Or no?
So like a dalet, but sukkah ends with the letter hey.
Yeah, again, the third sukkah has 2 walls, 2 solid walls, and a little spitz of extra board.
So it's not perfectly a hey, but it's almost.
Why not? What does a hay look like? A hay is a dalet plus a spitz,
Okay.
right? I mean,
Sure.
okay. And the words chometz and matzah both have mem tzadi. Chometz has a ches at the beginning, and matzah has a hay at the end. And if you look at the letters, the shapes of the letters, what is a hay? Suppose you took the little spitz of the hay. I don't know how you think spitz is a funny word. Right? You have the dalet. You have the dalet, right? And then you have the little piece of the hay. Suppose you grew the little piece. Grow it up. Let it rise until it joins the end of the dalet. Then you're going to get a ches, right? That's the difference. Matzah is unleavened, and chametz is leavened. Yes, wow, correct. That is wow, right? And there's a halacha associated with it, because the halacha is that the very same grains, which you can make matzah out of, those are the grains which, if they leaven, create chametz. Other grains, when they leaven, do not create chametz. They're not chametz. You can eat them. Rice, if you get rice to ferment somehow and it rises, rice flour, that's not chametz, because it's the wrong grain. So chametz, matzah is really frustrated chametz. That's what I put, right? It has yeast on it. It wants to go. No, but you're very careful. You beat it down and you cook it very quickly and very hot, and you make sure that it doesn't, right, because otherwise it would spontaneously become chametz. That's built into the shapes of the letters. This is a whole system. The avenues of significance are really, to a certain extent, unlimited, and they cover the number and the organization and the order and percentages and even shapes. Yeah.
Isn't the whole question of fermenting other grains a question of kitniot? Or is that
No.
that's not what it is?
No. It has nothing to do with it. This produce that's kitnios, it may or may not be able to be fermented and rise. Problem there was that the transportation and sale of grain products was the things tended to get mixed, and in certain areas of the world, as far as I know, don't have any prohibitions against kitnios. It didn't happen by them, but in Europe it did happen. So it was very difficult to get the beans or whatever it was, to get them pure out with no grain. That was the problem. And so they're abundant. They're abundant because you might come to be in contact with flour which had fermented. Okay.